Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Rise and Fall of the Curse 6, where me and Soul dive into the remaining Curse artifact characters. Just want to let you guys all know that we are diving more into the JP side of content, so keep that in mind as we're going on with these kits. And with that being said, let's go ahead and dive right into the Rise and Fall of the remaining Curse 6.
You mentioned Cater, which is actually who we're going to be talking about next. And I'm actually going to let you kind of lead into this conversation because I don't really use Cater that much, other than just I enjoyed using her when she got her rework, and that's pretty much it. And I know on the global side, she's a massive freaking hit. Like you're saying, people are still using her, but she's still viable. So go like continue using her by all means. And I know she can solo some entropies for both sides. I never soloed any entropy with her. I've literally only soloed like one or two, if that. The one that I did solo was with Zach, and that was annoying. I'll never solo an entropy ever again because half of the solo is no, like 90% of the solo, okay, is literally RNG, and the 10% is skill. So the fact that 90% is RNG, I'm good. I don't need any of that. I don't like RNG, so I don't solo no more. And I would love to solo with character like Lightning as well, but no, I don't do that. So props off to you, Soul, for actually, you know, mustering through the migraine that is soloing with characters in this game.
Oh yeah. Oh, it's an enlightening experience. That enlightening experience. That's for sure.
He did a
It's
pan.
I did. I'm very punny. But yeah, you think a cater solo is bad? Why don't you try a shadow solo? You haven't experienced agony until that. But cater. Okay, so like we mentioned earlier, before her EX plus, before her EX, she was a joke. She was a running gag. She was widely regarded as one of the worst characters in the game, next to Irvin. I'm trying to remember who like the really bad characters were. Irvin, I think Saz was another one before he got his 35 CP, and then Cater. There were many memes made about those characters. And once Cater's EX Plus came along and her rework came along, she was actually pretty darn solid. She's really good. When she first released the EX Plus, she could do a lot of damage. She has on her skill 2, she batteries herself when you use it. I believe it's instant turn rate. She gains some buffs, and she also has a 90% dodge rate, which 90% pretty darn good. But as anyone on my Discord server will tell you, anything less than 100 is 0 to me. So yeah, the 90s looks nice, but I promise you it'll fail when you don't want it to. Her skill 1 is AoE Ice Elemental, has lock for 1 turn on all enemies, which goes great with her dodge, single target HP attack, and whenever she dodges an attack, she will actually do a follow-up move, which I believe is also Ice Elemental. So she's very heavily prevalent, leaning towards ice. And then her EX plus, then when she uses her EX, it lays a trap down after an enemy goes. It's kind of like Emperor. If you guys have used Emperor, you know how Cater's trap is. It goes off, does damage, brave hits, 50% splash to other enemies. The thing with Cater is that her cursed artifacts give her a lot of longevity. Especially when she first got that EX plus, she did really well, and it's why she can solo so many dimensions end stages, is because one of her cursed artifacts gives her an extra use of both her skill 1 and skill 2, so it's basically VVs but on crack. And then her other one, her S2, it increases her own personal stats. I don't remember which ones they are, but they're both pretty nice to have, and so it's regarded that Cater, along with Serah, are probably the two that you want to have double cursed with. Although I've been seeing people leaning now towards Cater having 108 and the stat boosting one, but that's neither here nor there. But yeah, so Cater's pretty nice. Her cursed artifacts really do help her a lot. Pretty nice, pretty fun character. I have her somewhat built, so I haven't been able to use her too much. I missed her EX, but yeah, she's built for the future when and if she gets that LD.
The one thing I would want to ask you specifically, since I know you've been playing this game for such a long time, is can you kind of elaborate like why she was in the state that she was in before she got this rework, because a lot of players who are coming into the game now and maybe a little bit earlier don't really understand the history of these characters, especially these curse characters. So when you say like she was a meme and all of this, like what about her kit was bad in a sense that she needed such a heavy rework that she had got?
So, okay, that's a very fair question. So she was one of the last characters to get an EX. Like, if she wasn't the last one of, like, I'm talking like the old roster, you know, not barring any new characters that just come out. She was one of the last to get her EX plus and EX, and so she didn't have that. Before her rework, her skill 1 was not an HP dump. It was just a brave attack. Did not have the lock. Her skill 2, it gave her a dodge rate, but she had no follow up. I don't even remember if she had an HP plus. Basically, her kit was kind of just like how we were just talking about Yuna. Her kit just screamed ancient. I mean, she was from a very archaic era, and even with her 15 CP and her 35 CP, they just didn't do anything for her. It was really bad. She was very, very turn inefficient. Really didn't help the party out that much. She was kind of a walking disaster, unfortunately.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people don't understand the history of the game. Like, I know I wasn't playing from the beginning, but I was playing, like, you know, before we had the grateful pities that we have now. And I was playing during the time where brave attacks were like the hip thing, and HP attacks were rare a dozen. And any character that had an HP dump back in the day were considered gods. Like, Cloud was considered a god, Lightning was a god, Tidus was a god, all of them because they had HP attacks tied to their brave attacks. Back in the day, you literally would just, you know, pop a brave attack, as scarce as that is now, and then you would just HP dump on the next turn. And I think a lot of people are just kind of unaware of how the state of the game has changed in such a drastic way that it is today.
Oh, for sure. She's very much, again, a byproduct of just a bygone era where stages were kind of like a slugfest like they are now, but not in the sense of who can out HP damage the other. It was more like, okay, brave attack here, you know, and then HP attack when you have an opening. It was very much more a kind of a defensive kind of game, and any character that had that HP attack attached to a skill just was immediately head and shoulders above everyone else. So Cater, because she did have that old kit, she just got left behind on the wayside, and people forgot about her pretty darn quick. I really didn't see people talk about her aside from meme status for a very, very long time.
So now that we understand where she is now, do you think that the state of the game and she gets her LD, that it's going to give her a lot more? Or are you thinking more that she's just going to get emphasized in the role that she is now? Because I can actually see her becoming the dodge, like a dodge tank. That's kind of like the role that she plays now, is dodge tank, and she has good debuffs, or the trap debuff, I guess I should say. She's got the follow-up attack, so she's good on that end. I can see the LD probably giving her maybe possibly another trap, maybe a longer taunt than her just one turn, and just kind of fulfilling that role. But do you see maybe a different direction for her, or do you just kind of see like in that same way?
It's tough to say. It's tough to say because the devs really do some interesting things with LDs sometimes, and so my best guess is that they're going to embrace her kind of role as a hybrid tank role, where, you know, they might give her an extra trap or two with her LD. They might change her dodge up to 100%, give her that extra 10%. I don't know. I'm sure they'll increase the lock timer, and they might give her skill 1 some splash or whatever, you know, assuming she gets a rework or whatever. But she would also, I would imagine that her LD would probably have to increase her stats by quite a bit, because her follow-ups aren't very powerful, and she does batter herself up based on HP damage inflicted afterwards, but because the damage is so pitiful, it really doesn't help her out much. And if they do get through her dodge and hit her, she'll almost assuredly be broken, especially with Lafenia era now, where bosses are hitting for, crazy numbers. So I do think they'll embrace kind of that hybrid tank of, she dodges everything, she can get some heat off of you, and then she's got the follow-ups, for days.
Yeah, for sure. I can definitely see just that hybrid role being emphasized more. And hey, maybe that LD is also going to give her 100% evasion versus the what did you say, 90%? Which I understand. If it's on 100, it's 0. That's completely yes. It should be always 100.
But see, here's the thing. Even if they do that, who knows if that'll even help, because Boss and Lafenia now true HP damage.
Oh yeah, that's right.
I don't know. It'll be very interesting to see what they do with her. I think she has a lot of potential if they do indeed embrace that kind of tank rule of her. But yeah, it remains to be seen, because man, there are some crazy tanks in that on JP side now. Galoof and Gladiolus he just got his his lost chapter and all sorts of stuff. So yeah, she's got some big shoes to fill for sure.
I always love how you always say the next transition without even me saying it. So you're awesome. I feel like you're reading my mind. I'm glad that you mentioned JP, because we're going to be jumping more into the JP side knowledge of things, because these characters have their kits only in the JP. So we're first going to be talking about now Aerith. And I love Aerith. I love Final Fantasy VII. If you watched any of my other Rise and Fall videos, I go back to the dawn of time when I was a kid playing these games, because all these games are such a huge nostalgic factor for me. And I never played Final Fantasy VII when it first came out. I watched my brother play and all of my older cousins play, and that's how I was able to kind of dive into Final Fantasy VII through other people. And my first actual sit down and play by myself of a Final Fantasy game was Final Fantasy 13 Soul on the Xbox 360 that had those 3 to 4 discs. That was true to the if a Final Fantasy game didn't have more than 1 disc, it's not a Final Fantasy game. That's just how I see it. Because Final Fantasy VII had 4 or 3, and then I picked up Final Fantasy 13 and I saw that it had also another disc on the 360. So that was actually my first sit down in playing a Final Fantasy game, which is why I love 13 and Lightning so much, just because it was, my first time enjoying a game versus watching someone else enjoy the game. So now talking about Aerith, and her LD is bonkers because she needed it. Let's just start with that. She needed this LD. The LD came out during the era of follow-up attacks. So everyone was getting a follow-up attacks. Literally everybody was. And Aerith was no exception. So her LD is Seal Evil. That's the debuff that she gives. And she follow-up attacks every single thing that she does, she'll do the follow-up attack. And it's a gravity based on her attack, so it's really good. And she's also one of the Curse Artifact characters who require the 108 versus both Cursed Artifacts. So she's just like Yuna and Vivi, where they want 108 and 1 Cursed Artifact versus both. And I think her perfect is 108 and, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's Charged Asuna, or Charged Healing Wind. And that adds 1 to Healing Wind, and then I think it's 15% max brave to the entire party, which is amazing. And her LZ gives max brave to the party, attack up to the party. It gives HP up to the person who has the Steel Evil debuff, and increased brave damage to the person who has the Steel Evil debuff. So she is the entire package in one. And if you watched one of my videos, I think it was the one with Alexander Divine Illusions, where I actually explain that she can now be a potential breaking character because she has this gravity move. And it just opens up a whole new window for her, because at first you would think that she's just, healing support, little bit of damage here and there, and then boom, her EX Plus comes out and she's doing just as much damage, if not more, than a DPS would. So you're just like, oh my gosh, she's amazing. And then she kind of falls off a little bit because, of course, we're getting now into the LD era. And then when she gets her LD, it's boom. She has a follow-up attack. She gives all these amazing buffs to the party as well as herself. And another tip that you can get out of her LD is that it increases all of her now buffs online by 1 turn. So she never has to use her S2, like ever. Like you never have to use it. Just pop an LD and you'll never have to worry about her buffs, which is amazing. So for a character like Aerith, do you see kind of like the same potential in global as it got to her in JP? Or do you think global players are more attuned to DPS oriented characters like how you see now, like Vivi, for example, and Warrior of Light, for example, being a support slash DPS slash tank now that he got his LD and burst, which if you're using his burst for damage, God help you. Do you kind of see like the same roller coaster effect for Aerith as a curse artifact character? Or do you see more of like, people are going to say, oh, she's cursed, so eh?
Well, the thing that Global has that JP did not, for a very long time, Global now has the double reds, the guaranteed artifacts, if you have a Mog Pass active. So I think that being a thing in general, plus the fact that now we can do the batch artifacts, 10 at a time, I think that has positively influenced how people feel about the cursed characters. It's still, a nauseating feeling, being like, oh my god, having to chase this, but it's a lot more feasible now. I still see Aerith talked about, and I still see Aerith used in Global right now, because her buffs, the things she does for the party, are pretty nuts. She really has some excellent auras, some excellent party buffs, and that EX of hers is so nice too. And then that LD comes along and she goes from, excellent support, excellent auras to, oh shit, now she's got some really, really nice damage now, on top, just constant follow-up damage after everything she does. And like you said, I mean, I've seen runs of her in Lufenia after she gets her LD, where she'll literally use the LD once or twice, and then the rest of the match is her just using her HP plus and EX. She doesn't have to use any skills. So technically, Aerith is probably, into JP side, probably one of the most crazy characters in terms of longevity, because, again, there's really no reason to use one of her skills because she doesn't have to. And so I definitely think that because Aerith is so hugely popular as a character, I definitely think that she's still going to be embraced by the global side, just for a multitude of reasons. There's going to be so many people drawing for her just because she's Aerith. I mean, her LD could have been mediocre. It could have been Serah, and it would have, it wouldn't matter. So, that's how I felt about Lightning. Lightning could be mediocre, and I still would have drawn for it. It turns out that she's busted. So it goes. But yeah, so I definitely foresee Aerith having just as big of an impact on the global side, if not larger, because again, we do have those double reds. It was released so much sooner in the global timeline than the JP side. And so people have more time now to get her artifacts together for those that care about them. And yeah, I definitely think she's going to be a major player still.
When you think about the game and both sides, because I know you only play global, which if you want more information about me, I did play both sides. I'm more so emphasized on the JP side just because it was getting just a little bit too much. I do still kind of play here and there on global, but I just don't kind of cover it as much. I leave it more to you and everybody else. But the main thing about now, think about now with the raid that's just out now. When JP was having this raid, Aerith was still being used on this event. I even used her on this event just because, like you said, her auras are absolutely nuts and amazing. And if you think about moving ahead, she mostly falls off because so many support characters are on their way. And I know there's plenty of people out there who see like the timeline events through like, the months that like we even have on our Discord, the schedule. If you look at the schedule and see who's coming, we have so many supports on the way, so many nuts and busted supports that just kind of blow everything out of the water because they're coming out with their LD. And Aerith, unfortunately, just has her EX Plus. But I also want to say, don't assume that she's just unusable because of these supports coming out. She still has really amazing auras. Her curse artifacts are still amazing to this day. And just like you said, Soul, she's honestly, and I agree to that as well. And I'll even say that she's probably the best support that JP has to offer. Like the top 3, top 5, she is up there. And when her LD came out, yes, it was on a really horrible banner, which I'm not going to spoil the banner. It was just bad. Just know that. But that didn't change anyone pulling for her. I didn't change me for pulling for her. I pitied her, unfortunately, but I'll do it again on global. And I love the fact that a character such as Aerith, like you said, has such a good following where they get the love and support that we know the devs can give them. I just wish that love and support that we give to these characters are given to all the characters who have that maybe smaller following or maybe not as big, like Aerith and Cloud and all of them. Like, for example, Sabin. He doesn't really have a large following. He's got a following. But now with his LD coming out, like, just like you said, the famous thing, oh, everybody loves Sabin now because his LD is like, great. And he does this really cool animation and all the Sabin people are coming out of the woods saying they love Sabin.
Yep.
But it's like, you guys, I want to say that I want you as the players to just continue with that, because the devs do listen to us. They do in a sense understand that we have nostalgia for these characters. So a character like Aerith, for example, who got this amazing rework in LD, can happen to your characters as well when they get their LD. It's just that I wish it was extended to everybody, not just kind of characters that come on a banner and, like we say, just these people come out of just nowhere. And you're like, well, what the heck were you guys yesterday?
Yeah, for sure. And unfortunately, just due to the nature of gacha, that behavior is kind of encouraged because resources are always, so scarce, so rare. And in a lot of ways, you really do have to chase meta sometimes. You have to. Even people that don't like using it, you just run into a scenario where you need that extra firepower. And, I love using favorites as much as the next guy, but I drew for Gladiolus. I've got him in my back pocket because I know at some point I'm probably going to need what he offers. So, yeah, ideally, of course, it would be wonderful for the devs to really give deserved love to these characters that don't have as big of a following, like Lion. We were just talking about Lion earlier, where she's kind of overlooked because no one really knows who she is. But first and foremost, the devs are always in this to make money, and so they're gonna embrace those characters that are popular, and they make them really, really good on purpose. It's no mistake that you have characters like Lightning, like Aerith, like Cloud, et cetera, where these characters are really, really good, and very, very good at what they do. It's no coincidence whatsoever. They know exactly what they're doing.
Yeah, that's kind of like the sad truth when it comes to games like gacha, is that they know the characters that get the people to swipe that card, needless to say, and buy that new costume, I don't think anyone's buying the weapons that are in JP, not in global yet, because they're all ugly. At least until they release Crimson Sword or Crimson Edge for Lightning, then I'll absolutely buy that. But until then no, they're all ugly. But when a character like Aerith and her LD, would you say that her kit, in a sense, is I don't want to use the word finished, but I guess in a sense, do you think it's more complete now? Because thinking of Final Fantasy VII, absolutely yes, Cloud is the poster character for that game. But if you think about the old versions of the game and seeing how the new remake is, you can kind of debate that the poster character for those games are Cloud, Tifa, and Aerith. So do you think her character in a sense is more complete, or do you think like that's it, that she's not really going to get anything else?
That's a good question again, because it's hard to know. But I will say this: I've seen many runs of her in the JP version, and what she does is phenomenal. I mean, she really feels like a character that the devs had a set goal in their mind. Okay, here's what we want her to do. Here's what she needs to be better. Here's what she needs to be competitive in the meta moving forward. She has a very, very tight kit. I really don't like Aerith as a character that much, but I'll be the first to line up and admit that in DFFOO, she is very, very, very good. And it's clear that the devs, again, they really had a plan for her, and they executed it perfectly. But going back to the, the Yuna thing, where if they do start giving bursts to these quote-unquote secondary characters, I definitely think Aerith is a prime target. I also think Tifa is a prime target, so it'll be very interesting to see what the devs do if at some point we reach that point, who they'll pick. But I could definitely see her being a candidate for it. I have no idea what it would do. Probably just make her even more of a freakishly ridiculous tank. Or not tank, I'm sorry, like aura bot, where she has these insane auras. Maybe she'll get a burst effect like how Ramza does, where Ramza makes everyone's stats spike through the roof into outer space for the 6 turns or whatever his burst is. So maybe we'll see the same thing with Aerith. I really don't know. Maybe we'll see Aerith. Maybe they'll embrace the fact that, she has the white materia or whatever, and her original, when Aerith originally came in, she was, supposed to be healing. She had prayer, etc. Which, if I recall correctly, Aerith was the only character in the game at that point that could revive a dead teammate. So maybe we'll see them embrace more of that white mage side of her, where they'll make her, heavier healing, or they'll make it so that all characters have auto raise or something. Auto raise that doesn't affect the score. Maybe we'll see something like that. I really don't know. The sky's kind of the limit, but I definitely think that while she has a very, very tight kit that does feel done, I could definitely see the devs trying to sneak a burst in there at some point for her, because she's so overwhelmingly popular.
Honestly, when it comes to Tifa and Aerith, I think unless they give them both one, giving one or the other one is going to cause, I think, in my mind, just a lot of controversy with the other side. They're like, why didn't Tifa get one? Why didn't Aerith get one? So
the other side, other people, yeah.
So but I agree. If she ends up, getting picked, honestly, I can see the burst probably giving her more damage potential, more ore bots, just kind of make it more out of this world, because like you said, the sky's the limit with these characters. And like I was saying earlier, I don't want to use the word finish when it comes to her, because power creep is inevitable, those big words, in a gacha game. So it's only natural that, she kind of has her adversary in the game that maybe does what she does, but a little better. And then we'll kind of come back to Aerith and maybe all these cursed characters eventually when they get more of their kits into the game. But moving on to the next character, because I saved the best character for last, Soul, just for you. I'm sure everyone knows who this character is, because we didn't talk about it till now. But let's go ahead and talk about the character who literally poured salt in everyone's mouth, and that's Serah. So, okay, where do we begin with Serah? Okay, I don't even know. Let's go ahead and talk about the chapter where she was released, because I was actually told from my research, for the people that I've talked to, that she was actually really good when she first came out. Is that true, Soul?
Absolutely. I'm sure many people listening to this have heard of a content creator called Jin Lee. Him and I are friends. We talk, a lot, and we were very in tune with what we were doing back then, because our channels kind of got big right around the same time. Well, mine got probably big a little bit before his did, but then his really took off. And he swore up and down about Serah's potential, especially when Serah got her EX. Like I couldn't get the guy to stop talking about Serah. Like she was in like almost every single comp he ran because she had that poison on her skill 1, but it's her buffs on that skill 2 that are so good. And then she had her auras, and back then we really, to that point, hadn't seen anyone in the game that not only gave really, really nice buffs, but also had nice auras. So we were really stacking some heavy duty stats. Serah also batteried the party. Her EX now had a frame debuff where it's kind of like a poison effect. So she was stacking her generic poison from S1 and then the EX sap or poison. And she really did a lot. She was a very, very solid character. And so people were just like, oh man, wait till that LD hits. This girl, you know, she got her EX plus. Her EX plus is it's okay. You know, it did what it needed to be done. But man, people were like, oh, this LD is gonna be sick. And I remember when her LD got announced, people were so excited. I know, Riley, I know you were super excited. People were so excited for the inferior sister. And so her LD's coming down the pipe, and people are speculating like, oh man, okay, so she's gonna have this, or maybe she could have that. You know, are they gonna embrace this part of 13.2, or you know, et cetera, et cetera. And then that LD comes out, and well, Riley, I'll leave it to you if you'd like to describe how that LD impacted your character.
Oh, yikes. Your mic cut out right after you said inferior sister, so you're gonna have to repeat all of that.
Oh, shoot. Okay, lightning. Yes. Serah, no. Go ahead.
Okay, so I'm glad that she actually had a good upbringing. That honestly put a smile on my face when you were talking about Jin Lee and how he was ecstatic for this character's kit, because it makes me feel good that at least she had some type of prominence in the game. Now, when it comes to her LD, yes, like Soul said, I was jumping out of my chair in excitement when I first was watching the video. I was like, oh my God, like this is it. Like Serah's going to be so amazing. She's going to blow everybody out of the water because she's 13-2 and, you know, and everyone loves lightning. So Serah's got to be really good. And, you know, note to self, I love Serah just as much as I love lightning. I can't pick between the two because I just love them so much. And when I saw the debuff given from the LD, I was like, oh my God, yes, she's got a new amazing debuff. Like, this is it. Like, this is it. And then freaking Holly goes, oh, that's the same debuff. I was like, are you freaking kidding me? Are you freaking kidding? It's the same debuff that her EX Plus gives? Who okayed this? And it just went completely downhill from there. And another thing I want to point out is that her her LD ability is called Paradigm Shift. So she switches through, you know, all the paradigms from 13.2 and 13, and she switches into the medic paradigm. Soul, okay, medic, and she still does not heal. That is the one thing I wanted to see from her kit, is that she needed an HP regen, period. Because the only person who has HP regen in 13 as a series is Snow from his C65, which is garbage. Okay, so if they wanted a character to be a support character for the 13 series, it had to be Serah because she had the potential and she had the kit. And then you see this LD, she switches through all the paradigms and doesn't heal. Doesn't do an HP regen. It's just like, it just made your mind race, and you're like, do they just not love 13.2? Like, what was the reason for all of this? And then she's a cursed artifact character, and she's one of the cursed artifact characters who require both cursed artifacts, okay? Both of them. And because getting 108 and one cursed artifact, is not good enough. She needs the max brave and attack from both of them, and she needs the moonlight plus from the other one. So it's just, when I think about this character, it frustrates me because I know the devs can do better. they absolutely can do better with this character and with many other characters. And for a character like this to be given cursed artifacts was already a kick in the butt. You know, that was already, all right, whatever, I'll get the cursed artifacts for her, sure. Then this LD comes out, and every character up to this point was, you know, on overdrive with their LD. They were so good now, on top of the world. Their LD put them on the map. And then Serah's LD comes, and where is she? Okay? Where did she go? Because I forcibly used her, by the way, I might add, because the only way I was able to use her was alongside Aerith, because she does not work by herself. Her battery does not work by itself. Her debuffs do not work by themselves. So it's just, like, do you hear my frustration when I'm talking about this character, or is it just me?
No, I absolutely feel you. And it's by complete, I don't know if this was by choice or just fortunate coincidence, but we just went from a character that feels so tight and so well thought out in Aerith. And then we look at Serah, and it's like you said, it's almost like they just didn't know what to do with that LD. It's mind-blowing to me, because I saw the trailer for it, and I was like, oh wow, that animation looks really nice. You know, they had her old costume coming out, so people were excited about that, you know, her 13 look. And then people got their hands on it. And I remember the night it released, I was having people tell me this thing is bad. This is worse than mediocre. Like, this is bad. And I was just like what happened? Like, what do you mean it's bad? Because rarely do you see the devs make a massive misstep in this game, you know, to the point where it feels like they just completely missed the mark. And no, people were telling me like, no, like, just watch her run with her and see how it looks. And there's a JP player I follow. I watch pretty much every single video he uploads, and I can't even remember if he uploaded a Serah run. Like, that's how bad she is. Like, this guy draws on damn near everything, builds damn near everyone, and I don't think he uploaded a Serah run, because either he just didn't draw on her, or because she was so cumbersome he just couldn't make her work. And it's really disappointing, because she deserves a lot more. She was so good, you know, early on in the game. Yeah, you know, with that EX and the 15 and 35 CPs, and everything felt really nice. She felt like a great character. She had the battery, the stats, the auras to back everything up, the buffs. And then Lufenia era hits, and the devs were just like, just give her a flashy animation, and they'll figure it out. And turns out players didn't figure it out. It turns out that it's incredibly underwhelming, and the biggest thing for me is that it did not embrace what Serah does well. Her kit is her S2 is still one hit. It's still one hit. In Lufenia era, the battery, it's not like the battery is like an astounding 70,000 brave to the party when she uses it. Her battery was untouched, and with some brave game reducing happening in Lufenia era, we've seen that happen a few times, and you know, you have situations where her S2 is barely battering. It's a one-hit move. Like, what is she here for? What is she doing? Like, what is she offering that literally any other support can't offer? That's the biggest thing with these kind of games, these gacha games, where each new character they release has to do something new. They have to do something unique, or they have to take an old mechanic and really kind of crank it up to the next level to make people excited for them, you know. And that's the same thing with new LDs and new bursts. They have to get players excited. They have to get players talking. And Serah's LD, for lack of a better term, it feels like a wet fart. Like, it really kind of came and went. People were like, oh, this is really bad. And there it went. So with all this in mind, Riley, how, in your opinion, how do you go about not only fixing her? So I'm not talking like getting her top tier. I'm talking about, how do you even, number one, fix her? And number two, then, how do you make her go to that next step to where she's better than competent, she's actually good? Like, what do the devs need to do to fix the disaster known as LD Serah?
Oh gosh, you just released like a whole can of worms right now. because she needed an HP regen, and everyone that I talked to about this agrees with me, because she got a brave regen of all things with her LD. That wasn't something that she needed. Yes, it sustains the party as well as her when it comes to dumping HP attacks, because she has a pretty potent brave regen. It's not great, but it's pretty good. And when you think about her kit in Lufenia and how I used her with Aerith, she wasn't doing anything. It was just Aerith doing it for her that allowed Garland, my main DPS, to do what he does. And when you're doing a roster and you're picking a team for these fights, like Lufenia, especially Lufenia, because that's what we're dealing with now, you literally have to look at your characters and say, this person's doing this person's doing this, and this person is doing this. You can't make a team where one person is not doing their role. It just doesn't work, because you will get stomped on in Lufenia, completely stomped on. And for her to be released with this LD, she needed that, because that sustains her as a support battery character that she needed to be for that role. Now that she doesn't have that HP regen, you have to bring someone like Aerith who can heal for your team. That was such a missed opportunity for Serah. And as you said, her Moonlight hits one time. One time. How does that shave anything down? I can understand if her Moonlight was still hitting one time, but they upped the ante on her poison debuff, and they upped the ante on her debuff from her EX plus. I'm shaking on the name right now because I'm so pissed talking about Serah. But her EX debuff needed to be more potent if they were going to keep her kit the same. Okay, that had to be way, way, way higher. It's still the same. It's still the same potency as it was in the Cosmos era. And that just baffles me, which, by the way, Soul, if you didn't know when you were watching the video, that video was being done in the Cosmos fight for Yashilla's event.
You're joking.
No, I'm not. Cosmos? That was the Cosmos fight. It wasn't even Chaos, and it wasn't even the Lufenia.
Oh no. Oh no.
So that was a downfall all in itself. And okay, so let's go ahead and talk about, the difference of a Brave Breaker and a Brave Shaver. Okay, a Brave Breaker is like Garland, who has a butt ton of brave attacks, whose main purpose is to break and deal damage, right? Wouldn't you agree that's the purpose of a Brave Breaker, is to break damage? So a Brave Shaver is someone who's supposed to help your team then break the enemy. So if she is supposed to be a Brave Shaver with these debuffs, why is she still hitting ones, and why is the potencies still low? That doesn't make her a Brave Shaver either. So really, she's just no role. She doesn't have a role. You can say she's support, you can say she's a battery support, but really it's nothing, because you take her into Lufenia and she doesn't do those things. She doesn't do the battery. She doesn't do the support. So what does she do? She just sits there, and that frustrates me, because I love Serah, and like I said, I know the devs can do better with this kit. And it baffles me that, they just said, oh, we're just going to slap on this animation that looks super cool. And then boom, we're going to bring out a costume and then, hope everyone buys it. Well, I mean, I guess it worked because I bought the costume. But, when I was actually using this in testing, I was like, this is embarrassing. Like, this is embarrassing. And that's the kind of like answering both at the same time, because she needs to be in a role. You can't bring her into a Lufenia without doing at least one of those roles. And in today's game, especially in JP, it's now soon to be global, because you guys are eventually going to catch up with us. You're going to understand that these characters need to do these roles. And if they're not doing these roles, then they will not be able to do Lufenia fights efficiently. Okay, that's the key word there, efficiently. And Serah is just not efficient. She doesn't give free turns, or not even a free turn. She doesn't even give a free skill to herself, which is something else that she could have used because her C65 is not great, but it's good support. It's, I think, more overflow for the party, which is always good. That's always good to have overflow. So, you know, she just doesn't have anything that you would think she would get with this LD that every other character had gotten thus far. And the only character that was released that kind of had a little bit, just a tiny bit of controversy was Gabranth. Because if you remember, Soul, Gabranth was released during the LD era, but he did not get his LD because he was with Vaughn, and Vaughn got the LD and burst on that banner. Yes, Gabranth is absolutely amazing. He does his role in Lufenia perfectly fine. You just wish that he had that extra oomph, that extra power, you know, just that little extraness to him. And he got that with his LD. But when you look at a character like Serah and you're like, oh, I just wish she had this extra oomph. Well, she has her LD. So what's next? What's next for her? She is the epitome of hope that I hope secondary characters, because let's be honest, she's secondary. 13-2 was just lightning and Serah was just playable.
Yeah.
That's just how I see it. Serah was just playable, but it was about lightning. And you just think about what's next for her because she's got her LD, she's got the full kit. So is this it? Is this all that she's gonna get? And if she gets a burst, this better come with an actual rework. I'd honestly be more excited for a rework than her burst. And that's sad because a burst is, like you said, something that gets people hyped, something that gets people excited, something that, you know, makes people itch like, yes, I want to pull for this. That burst looks so cool. But honestly, if they show a video tomorrow, Soul, about a rework Serah, I'm good. I'm pulling again. Like, I already have everything, but I'll be pulling again just cause she's got a rework. But at this point, it's like she doesn't fulfill anything. And that is honest. You just can't have that in this game. You just can't.
Yeah, agreed 100% with you. I felt the exact same way about Sephiroth for a very, very long time because Sephiroth used to be the king of memes for Lufenia era in terms of cucks and missed opportunity. And then Serah just politely sat down next to him and said, "Don't worry, I'm here too." So when he was finally announced that he got his rework, I lost my shit. I lost my mind. Like, same deal with you. If he didn't have burst, but he had gotten that rework months earlier, I would have been just as excited because he just needed help. He just needed more. And Sarah's the same way. Now, I would bet my house that she will get a rework if and when she comes back around with a burst or something, which, you know, I definitely do think that she's a prime target for that. And if not a burst, then she'll get a rework at some point. She has to. She has to. Like, there's just no other alternative. So I'll be very, very curious to see how the devs handle her because they do have their ear to the community. They do hear what people are saying, and people are saying that Serah is really not great, and I'm sure they've heard that. So it really remains to be seen what they'll do. But again, I have faith that they'll do well because they have saved characters that were sent to the perma bench before. So we'll see what happens, Riley. Hopefully it's sooner rather than later.
Oh man, I really hope it doesn't get released, her rework, and then the game's like the next day, okay, we're shutting down. I would cry immediately. Like, we waited all this time for this rework, and now this happens. That's just like my biggest fear. And like you said, it's the devs do hear us. They do, at least I hope they do. I pray and hope that they do take some of our input because most of the input that I hear is like, what? But I hope they do understand and really understand where we are coming from as a community when it comes to these characters. Because like you said, when the LD comes out for these characters, that's kind of their way of coming back. That's kind of their way to bring these characters back into the spotlight. Like, hey, you forgot this character, but now their OD is here, and now they're, banging, they're hopping, they're doing the stuff in Lufenia. So get excited for this new banner coming out. And when it comes to Serah, it's just plummeted, like nose dive down, like the plane has crashed, and it's just kind of like a shock value, because you see this and you're like, man, I really hope that this isn't a possible trend now. Like, I really hope that this is it. They learned their lesson and they're not going to be doing this again. Because you can have a glimmer of hope that it wasn't just, that it was just Serah, because Null now has his LD, and I'm not going to spoil too much about it, but it's really good. It's really, really, really good. And his rework is really freaking good. Like, he fits his role and he does it perfectly, which again, I'm emphasizing that that's what you want for your team comps in Lufenia. And seeing a character like Serah who isn't, I just really wish that they learn from this, and the next time that Serah is around the corner, that they're like, hey, we hear you, we heard you, and now this is her rework. And, we hope that we met not only your expectations, but the character as itself expectations as well, because Serah is a great character for the 13 franchise. She's not really a poster character, I want to say, because it's just really all lightning and honestly a little bit of snow, but she does have her shine in the game. And it's unfortunate to know that, a character like her who has all this potential was just really not really given anything. And as a fruit for thought to kind of all these curse artifact characters as a whole, because when we're talking about a character like Serah and ending a character with Serah, I don't really want to end on a bad note, because most of these, I don't want to say most of them, but a majority of these curse artifact characters really ended on a good rise. Like, they had their ups and downs like every other character in the game, but most of the characters here, they did have eventually a good rise, and they just kind of stayed there. So when it comes to these curse artifact characters, where do you think the devs can go from here? Do you think that they're just kind of keeping these characters to the 6? Do you think maybe they'll possibly release a new curse artifact character? Do you think someone's going to get a treatment as a curse artifact character? Or do you just think that they're just kind of learned their lesson like they have with Serah's LD and just not really going to do this again?
I don't anticipate us ever seeing a character like this, like these 6 ever again. When the devs released the Curse 6, the feedback, the pushback from the community was so strong that they opted never to do it again. Now, the original reason the devs did the Curse 6 is because originally, when they were thinking about ways to improve characters, reworks were not a thing. Their idea of a rework was to have the players grind artifacts to do it, so they themselves didn't have to do it. It was less work on their side. The problem is that they made the rates on these cursed artifacts so abysmally terrible that you could roll like literally thousands of cursed thousands of artifacts, and not see a single double cursed. That's how bad they are. Trust me, I know full well how bad it can be. Yuna just sent me to the cleaners and back with hers. So once they saw the pushback, they were like, okay, you know what? We heard you guys loud and clear. And from that point forward, they started doing the character reworks on their side. And ever since then, it's been great. They take initiative, they improve characters, they hype people up. And it feels like this is how it should have been all along. The Curse 6, I feel like are kind of a blemish that they can't really remove from the game. They can't just outright remove the artifacts from the artifact pool, because then these characters are having those stats, those potential stats and extra abilities just taken away from them. And the cursed characters without their cursed artifacts lose so much potential. So they can't really remove them from the artifact pool, but at the same time, they can't just gift them to players, because then all the players before that struggled and suffered to build these characters up are going to feel jilted. Now we're kind of seeing that with the guaranteed reds, where the cursed people are much easier to build now, which has led to some understandable salt, but it's at least feasible now for 99% of the player base to at least have a chance now. So I really don't think we'll ever see something like this ever again, because it really felt like they tried something new. It wasn't received well. It was a resounding negative reaction to it. People were like, we do not want this. We don't want to have to grind and grind and grind for my favorite character to be relevant. And the devs were like, okay, you know what? We understand. And so they're kind of like a time capsule of a different era, an era that many would not prefer to remember, but it is what it is. You know, that they're very strong, but yeah, originally they were intended to be the reworks that characters are now regularly getting, you know, by themselves from the devs. So I really don't think we'll ever see anything like this again, thankfully.
Alrighty guys, that is the ending to the two-part series of the Rise and Fall of the Curse 6. I'm super humbled and thankful to Soul for joining me in this video. I honestly couldn't do this without him, and he's such a great friend of mine. I really wish and hope that he will understand the gratitude and humbleness that I have towards him. It's honestly monumental, and I'm so thankful that I have a friend like him in this community. So thank you, Soul, so much. I also want to go ahead and thank all of you guys for watching this series and supporting the channel. And if you like what you saw, definitely leave a thumbs up and leave a comment in the section below and let me know maybe if I missed something or didn't go in depth enough about a character that maybe you want to share. By all means, let me know. But with that being said, guys, as always, I'll see you next time.